Again, Bitcoin's trying to bounce off that 50-period moving average in the daily time frame. We got the bottoming tail there. That was where the lower Bollinger Band was. Again, it could give us a bounce, and we end up getting a larger sell-off if we take out the support level that we're trying to bounce off of. You'll see it up close in a moment. But again, have some divergences complete. We had a divergence over here on momentum, and then we got a larger divergence right here. That, again, we've been talking about the divergences that formed. We got one on the RSI, we got one here with momentum and different indicators. If we end up taking out the 50, we've got our 100 period, we've got the trend line right here, you've got the 200. Again, Bitcoin bounced off that 100 period over here. Remember that when we got above the 100, we pulled back to it for a test here a couple of times, and then eventually that led to the breakout here, and again, the breakout and back test. Does this divergence give us a mild pullback? Does it give us something bigger back to the 100 period moving average or maybe the trend line? Or again, try to bust up and go higher through the holidays to the upper channel in the weekly time frame using our log scaling that I've talked about. You'll see it again in this video. The divergence, triple divergence here, still in play here with the price of Bitcoin trying to bounce off of our support and our 50-period moving average. That horizontal support area continues to be an area of interest. That's where the buyers keep coming in at. Here's the problem: is we've got the triple divergence on the RSI. We've got a negative divergence down here on the MACD down below there that has now completed. That's given us a sell-off so far of about 15%. So what I'm watching is to see what happens at horizontal support in our 50 period. And again, we end up going lower. You've got your 100 period moving average and the trend line that might be tested if we end up getting a bigger sell-off with Bitcoin. That could take it back towards the high 70,000 range, 77, 78,000, 79,000, or on up into the 80,000 level if we end up getting a bigger sell-off immediately, or if we take our time going there again a little bit higher on into the low to mid 80,000 range, 85,000 or just under 85,000. So again, just some levels of support to be watching. We broke the trend line on the RSI in the daily time frame, so there's risk now of a bigger sell-off. And as I've said, a larger head and shoulders could still end up developing here with our bounce again and still take us lower. And below this trend line is the breakout point of the 74,700 area there. Now we're at the 50 level right now. So again, we've seen the sell-off. We've taken out the 50 level. We've broken the trend line. So again, if you can get back above the trend line, and you could try to clear the trend lines of resistance that we turned off of in the weekly time frame, you'll see them in this video. But drop below 50 here and stay below it. We're just right below it right now. We're just well, it's not corrected. We were below it and we got right back above it. We're just slightly above it right now with the Saturday trading session, but we did drop below it going down to that 50 period moving average. If we can hold below the 50, then you can get a bigger sell-off. If you drop below it, get back above it, again, likely going sideways. If you get above it, stay above it, then you're going higher as we've been. I've marked out it with this blue box that we've been, we pushed above the 50 level here. We've been consistently above it. And again, this is where we were testing our 100 period moving average. So losing the 50 level here, breaking the trend line, losing the 50, staying below 50 will give us a bigger sell-off. If you can, bounce off the 50-day and bounce off the 50 level on the RSI, then again, still may try to set up a lower high or try to clear this peak right here. So we'll be watching the RSI closely, but you do have the divergence, triple divergence there. You've got a negative divergence here on the MACD. It's still in positive territory. Same thing here. MACD went positive. MACD went positive right here in September. We got above that 100 period moving average. We pulled back to it. We found support at the center line there with the MACD with that test of the 100 period. And the MACD has been positive. In positive, it's gotten some rollovers with pullbacks, volatility, but it's still in positive territory. So we're still above the 100. Again, Bitcoin follows the 100 in the daily. It follows the 20-week in the weekly. There's some things to be watching with the MACD. and the RSI. Please support the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the indicators or like the charts, and you will, then consider supporting the channel. I don't have any sponsors. I turn those offers down. I don't want you to, they send me offer. They contact me all the time, and I'm going to send you to an exchange who wants to get you all leveraged up and wipe you out, or sell you something with artificially inflated commissions. I just ask that you simply support the channel. So please consider helping out and partnering with me. The money made on YouTube channels is largely through sponsorship, and I just don't choose to do that. There's a lot of shady deals on the internet, so I just ask that you help out. So please consider doing that today. I thank you for your consideration for that. Quickly, we have, again, momentum having turned. We're trying to turn some of the trend signals. Our cloud has turned back to bearish. We're seeing the background turn back to bearish. We've got some sell signals going on here, but we're finding support here. The trend signal, we've gone flatline. We're going sideways here. We pulled back towards that level. Here's our 100 period moving average. We have balance of power in the daily time frame. Balance of power going negative. So we're seeing some trend signals begin to turn. And again, we go flatline, but we did get the arrow. We did get some sell signals there. Still might try to end up going through the resistance that we're turning off of. We got a circle over here for the sideways move. We did not get one over here. That's just marking the short-term momentum. So just some things to be watching. Also, there was no T present, which again is just marking short-term momentum. There was no T present here. So we did get some signals. We'll see what happens. Can we clear resistance, or do we get a bigger sell-off off of it? Right now, momentum signals are bearish. Some trend signals are bearish. Here with the swing line, it's showing that we're going sideways with that divergence that formed in the daily time frame. Now here I have the bars reflecting the trend. They've started to turn back to orange here, and then finding support. See this blue line here? This represents a short-term trend. We're finding support there, but again, the background in the daily time frame turning, the cloud turning, some sell signals, but not all sell signals showing up, just some. And we've seen the momentum go negative. Again, we've had a triple divergence form, very similar to what we saw on the RSI. If the horizontal support breaks, which I'll show you in this video, then again, we could get a bigger sell-off. We'll have negative divergences looming over the daily chart, triple negative divergence here on momentum and the RSI, and a negative divergence on the MACD. If you watch the video all the way through, you'll see the divergences that are forming in the weekly time frame. But again, the bulls are still in control in the weekly time frame. Momentum is turned here in the daily time frame. And do we get a shallow pullback? Do we get a bigger pullback? Or does this evolve into a larger reversal? Momentum line right after the Fed. So too here with that bar, we saw the impulse line representing momentum. It turned immediately with that sell-off. And then we have now the ribbon is starting to flip red right here. This green ribbon is starting to flip back to red. So is this bottoming tail just give us a bounce, or does it give us a bottom? Do we get a bounce and then go down further and break horizontal support, which you'll see in a moment? We see manipulation to the upside and try to clear resistance, maybe on lighter volume. So far, these divergences in the daily time frame, here with momentum on the RSI and other indicators that I've shown you, played out here with triple divergence. Okay, it is halfway through the Saturday session for Bitcoin. Bitcoin sold off, and now it's attempting to rebound as of Friday's bottoming tail. Currently, Bitcoin right now, halfway through the Saturday session, is down about 0.4%. We saw a sell-off here. Thursday, we were down 2.77%. We had seen the drop continue to where we dropped 15% here on the Bitcoin price down to the 50-period moving average. Continuing that drop, but then we saw the rebound back up with the inflation, the PCE inflation data, which came in better than expected, over a month basis and on a year basis. You can see that if you'll watch the video that I link at the end of this video. I covered that in the video on my stock channel. Bitcoin got a bottoming tail at the 50 period and horizontal support. again, this support area has been interesting. If I just go back a little bit here, you can see that, again, it was resistance. We broke through it. It acted as support right here. And then we broke it. We formed the triangle. We formed the triangle. We broke out of the triangle, went to 100,000, went up 5% in one session right there after the breakout right here. And then we dropped 11.25%. And then we rebounded back up, very similar to what we had over here, this bottoming tail at the support area. So we had it with the initial breakout of 100,000. And then we back tested again. Even though we did it with that one day, we ended up going up here and back testing, throwing back to the apex of the triangle, and then went on higher. And we went up to the trend lines that I've been talking about in the weekly time frame. We got this topping tail there in the form of a gravestone doji, got confirmed and a follow through. And then again, we've now dropped 15%. So is this a pullback that will eventually build momentum, or do we get a bigger pullback? Does it build momentum to eventually try to clear the resistance levels in the weekly time frame, which we very well could do? Or again, we're going into the holidays here. We're going to get light trading volume, so Bitcoin can be manipulated up or down very easily on lighter volume. So do keep that in mind. Or is this going to mark a peak at those levels of resistance that I've been talking about? You'll see them in this video if you watch it. I've been talking about them in every single video, the trend lines in the weekly time frame with using the linear and the log scaling. So bouncing off support, bouncing off the 50 period. The 10 is still above the 20 here. Again, we tried to rally here a little bit back up towards the 20, but that's failing so far. But this bottoming tail is holding. We'll be watching to see if it holds. Happens as we go into the week of Christmas here, and the stock market will be closed on Christmas Day and have an abbreviated session, I believe, on Christmas Eve. So again, lighter trading volume for the stock market, and for Bitcoin, we'll be watching to see what happens. But keep your eye on this 50 period and the bottoming tail here at horizontal support. So very interesting. Buyers came in right there. Another thing to be aware of, if we can't break above this peak right here and we end up drifting sideways for a little while, you could form a head and shoulders pattern here in the daily time frame. And again, if we just kind of drift sideways over the holidays and then on into early January, again, it's possible that you set up this pattern. Now, so far in the weekly time frame, we're down just under 7%, 6.85% for the week. But remember, we've dropped 15% from the high down to the low made there on Friday. So from our high to our low, we've dropped 15%. But on a weekly basis from the close, because again, you can see here on the weekly chart that Bitcoin went higher after the previous week's close there on Sunday. We went higher, hit the trend line, and then turned down off of it, and we dropped 15%. So a 15% drop, even though we've only dropped just under 7% here in the weekly time frame from the previous week's closes, because we went higher. Now, I've talked about the two trend lines. This is a linear scaling, and I've talked about the 2017 peak, and if we exclude the shadows here from the first 2021 high and connect it to the second 2021 high here at 69,000, it pointed right up to where we're at right here, and we stalled right there. Now, we still may try to get above this level. We may just get a small pullback, which right now, so far it's been 15% from the high. We may get a bigger pullback and still try to do it. Bitcoin can easily be manipulated on very, very light volume surrounding the holidays, so keep that in mind. But if it does clear this area, we still might hit the longer term channel in the weekly time frame using our log scaling. So this is our linear scaling. We're turning off of this trend line, at least so far. We'll be watching. This could either just give us a smaller pullback or something bigger, a bigger pullback, or it could end up leading to a complete reversal. If we start seeing signals in the weekly time frame start turning back to bearish. Still bullish right now. We've clearly seen the weakness in the daily time frame with rejection off of this trend line. In addition to the rejection off this trend line in the linear, with the linear scaling used in the weekly time frame going all the way back to 2017, we also have a trend line from the low over here that we'll be looking at on the log scaling. And then we have the log scaling here, and this trend line right here from the 2020 low, it separates the two peaks in 2021. And if you connect that to the low here, excluding the shadows in 2022, it's pointing right up to where we just stalled out at. So again, two important trend lines that I'm watching here using the log scaling from the 2021 low, and again, the trend line with the linear using the peak of the 2017 top. Did to 2021 top. So two important trend lines we've stalled. Now, again, it could lead to a bigger pullback. It could lead to a reversal. We'll be watching. It may just be we get a mild pullback and still try to go higher if there is manipulation surrounding the holidays. But if we get a bigger pullback, we could still try to go to new highs in January. If we get a sell-off, we still may attempt a recovery and still try to go above this trend line. So again, just an important trend line. We did clear this trend line from the 2021 peaks, and currently that's acting as support. It has been for a couple of weeks here. We've been trying to break it, and then we bounce off of it. So again, we've been having that level hold. We'll see if we try to clear this trend line and the other 2017 trend line with the linear scaling or not. Our 20 period is a blue line. Our 10 period is a blue line. We're still above those levels. We're still pointing higher. If we start losing the 10-week moving average, and then eventually the 20, that would be very, very bearish. We bounced off our 50-week moving average here, and whoops, changed that to the wrong color here. We bounced off of our 50 period here at 49,000, and then again the higher low at 52,000. Signals turn right back to bullish in the daily time frame, and they've been consistently bullish in the daily time frame. A few pullbacks, but again, we got above that 100 period, we tested it, and then eventually we broke out right here, and we had a legitimate breakout here. Signals all turned back to bullish in the weekly time frame. Now, after 52,000, we bounced off 52,000, we began to see momentum turn back to bullish in the weekly time frame, and that caused the trend to turn back to bullish. So again, the bulls are in control, and again, even with this week's sell-off, the bulls still remain in control, but we're stalling at this resistance. Just as we stalled at this trend line of resistance and overhead resistance, this red line here where it represents the peak over here, just under 69,000, eventually we were able to clear those levels. So again, bulls are in control. Now, again, we're I talked about, and you might want to go watch it, I talk about another, I've been showing in my stock videos, and I'll link it at the end of this video. I've been showing on my stock channel the different recession indicators. I want to take the time to go watch that. I showed another one. These are leading indicators of recession that I've been showing in the videos. It's focusing on inflation, which is a lagging indicator. So you'll get the deflationary bust and the inflation will come back down. We're going to have a problem with inflation later on again after the recession, but nevertheless, I digress. You might want to go watch that video. But again, we're going to have a recession. The recession indicators are telling us we're going to have a recession. The Fed is ignoring it and dismissing it. Powell just said at the press conference on Wednesday, and I quote, "It's clear we've avoided a recession." No, they haven't. It's clear that the Fed is making the same monetary policy mistakes that they always make, that they made in 2007, being blindsided by that recession, and that they made in 2001. And also the same mistake, being blindsided by the inflation, which I talk about in that video. Coin, again, still could go higher. We could complete a blow-off top here at this trend line, or a little bit higher. If the recession shows up in the first or second quarter, Bitcoin could begin to price that in. But as I said, before we ever broke out, talking about this trend line right here, before we ever broke out, we still may try to reach it or go higher before the recession hits. But I said we had to get a legitimate breakout. We did. Signals all began to turn back to bullish in the weekly time frame with the trend signals. So we'll be watching this resistance. We'll be watching the next resistance higher, which I think is probably going to be reached. The S&P hasn't hit its upper boundary trend line, even though we've seen it with the Dow and the Russell. We have not, and if you go watch that other video, you'll see. Nope, I don't feature that in that video. Feature that in my Sunday video, but P still hasn't reached its upper channel. It still may, and Bitcoin still may. And here it is. Again, we're stalling at the trend line from the 2021 low here with the log scaling. Again, maybe we pull back, a bigger pullback, and then we try to go higher, or maybe a smaller pullback here, or a little bit lower, and then try to go higher. But I'll be watching this upper channel line. I think you got probably a pretty good chance we're going to try to reach that upper channel line, and maybe we try to do it over the next 2 weeks and just clear this area here on lighter volume going into January. maybe we get a bigger pullback. Right now, again, the signals have turned bearish as far as momentum, and some of the trend signals there in the daily time frame now with this reaction off of this trend line, they remain that way, then we can get a bigger sell-off, either a reversal or a pullback, a bigger pullback. But if we start trying to rally surrounding the holidays on lighter volume, then be watching this upper channel line if we try to do it sooner rather than later, this channel here I've been talking about. And as long as we hold above the 10-week moving average, then that is bullish. We may pull back to it and try to bounce off of it. 20 is directly below it. So pay attention to these trend lines here with the log scaling, here with the linear scaling. But I still think Bitcoin has a pretty good shot of reaching this upper boundary. And depending on when we come into contact with it, again, you could reach the 115,000 area, give or take, just under it or just over it. But if we take our time reaching it, say we get a bigger pullback and it goes on into January, then again, you might be looking at 120,000, 122,000. If we go to the end of January before we reach it, then maybe 125,000. The trend line would be the target. If we reach it immediately, it's going to be lower. If we take our time reaching it, it's going to be a little bit higher. So the trend line is the area that I'm watching. But you got really a nice looking channel here. We broke out of this channel, which was the bull flag. I think the odds are probably in favor of reaching this upper boundary level here in December or January. That could create a conclusion to the blow off top. It's possible we get it right here now if everything starts flipping back to bearish. But right now, getting some selling pressure after being up for many weeks here in our weekly time frame. I think Bitcoin has a pretty good shot at reaching this upper boundary, depending, again, how long it takes to reach it. These channels, if we zoom out here, have been very interesting. Larger channels, smaller channels. So the upper channel, an interesting area to be watching going forward. Should we be able to clear the trend lines of resistance that we've stalled at least so far there earlier this week. Here's the same channel using the Fibonacci channel right here. Here's our 20-week moving average. Here is the pitchfork from the low here to the high right here. And that trend line, again, coming in near the 120,000 area, give or take, if we hit it sooner. So if we do overthrow that upper boundary immediately over the holidays and this trend line comes into play, didn't quite reach it over here at the March high. So again, just something worth watching. But again, that upper channel line was reached that I showed you earlier. Again, the log scaling here. Again, this could take us higher on into, again, 120 to 125,000, depending on when we came into contact with it. So the upper boundary of the pitchfork is a little bit higher than the upper channel line. Again, it is the 1.5 expansion of this peak right here to this peak, or this low right here. That is the expansion of the pitchfork, the 1.5 Fibonacci expansion from the midpoint of the pitchfork. So just something worth watching. Again, Bitcoin follows the 20-week moving average. This is a 20-week moving average in the weekly time frame. Again, still positive. We're still holding above it. As long as we hold above it, Bitcoin can go a whole lot higher, even if it pulls back. So watch the 20-week moving average. Here we were above it, but we ended up dropping below it. It acted as resistance, and then we cleared it, pulled back, and then we got the breakout. Clearing the 20 period once again and getting that breakout. Below the 20-week moving average and holding below it, bad things are happening, rejection at it. And when you're above it, good things are happening. Got above it, found support at it, but then we broke it and we went sideways, got back above it, good things happening. Bitcoin follows the 20-week moving average in the weekly time frame. Over here, again, above that 20-week, we went parabolic. So again, we'll be watching what happens right here because we do have divergences that are forming between our peak right here. Again, they still may not be done yet. We still may go up to that upper channel line towards 115,000, 120,000, 122 or so. But you are still forming a divergence like what we formed over here. It's just a larger divergence, and it may not be done yet. It may even get larger if we can clear our current trend lines of resistance. But right now, in the weekly time frame, the bulls are still in power. As long as they are in power, Bitcoin could end up going a whole lot higher. Currently, we're seeing a sell-off this week, watching what happens over the holidays with the lighter trading volume as we move into the new year. Bitcoin follows the 20-week moving average. We're holding above it. Good things are happening. Weekly signals remain bullish. Critical mass turning bullish after going sideways. Validating the breakout. Weekly time frame, the cloud is still bullish. Again, we're above the moving averages there. If the rallies to continue, we got to hold above the 20-week moving average. As I've said, we got to hold above the 50-week moving average, which we bounced off of. But weekly signals still bullish. Now here, momentum still positive for Bitcoin in the weekly time frame. But here, take a look. Again, we're starting to see a little bit of red. So again, it's possible this evolves into a bigger pullback, maybe a reversal. Maybe we get another divergence developing here eventually, more recent in recent price action, or it develops bigger and we get a divergence that goes on into January here. Should we get a bigger sell-off over the holidays? We'll be watching to see how it unfolds. And then, if we do get a bigger sell-off, does it remain in positive territory? When we turned here, we started flipping everything back to bearish. It was validated. We rolled over here, but then it remained in the negative region up until we had the breakout here. So again, first it turned red. We marked the peak, and then we began to sell off. We ended up taking out the 20 and the 50 week moving average. So just some things to be aware of. Again, as we're turning down off of that those trend lines of resistance, I think we'll still likely try to go up to that upper channel line, but it is possible that we get the completing of a blow-off top at the trend lines I've been showing you. But we got to see momentum signals turn back to bullish in the daily time frame. And again, we're starting to turn some of the trending signals, and turning momentum has turned bearish in the daily time frame. Weekly charts are still bullish, but could this be suggesting a bigger pullback? Again, had it over here, but still ended up forming a larger divergence right here before we had this sell-off that caused Bitcoin to drop 33%. So again, weekly signals bullish, but something to be aware of as we're turning down off of resistance. We're seeing things like this happen. Momentum remains bullish in the weekly time frame. It turned bullish right after we hit the 52,000 area, and eventually the trend signals began to turn, but momentum here still bullish. And bars flipped back to green when we had the breakout here. We saw the bars flip back to green. Weekly time frame. Again, we'll be watching. Do we get a pullback here? Is this a pullback? Is this the start of a reversal, or do we just pull back and end up trying to break above this current resistance that we're turning down off of? Now, we did get a warning sign with the red circle that we got it the previous week again, and it moved. So again, it was warning, hey, prices are getting tired as we come up to that resistance level. Could get a pullback or a reversal. So far, we're getting a pullback. Momentum line in the weekly time frame still bullish. Trend signal still bullish, but we've seen a downturn. Again, we might see a divergence develop in this most recent price action, even if we get a bigger sell-off. So do keep that in mind. There's no other topping signal besides that, and this is just looking at momentum. But again, other peaks were associated. The topping signal and the sell signal, just as the bottoming signals formed at this low over here and the low over here as the bullish divergence set up on momentum and other indicators like the RSI and money flow. I think the MACD had it. Price oscillator. It was on a lot of indicators. So again, we'll be watching. You do have a possible divergence that's developing here, a larger one between these two peaks. That on the RSI as well, but it may not be done. A lot of my oscillators, same thing here, turning down but not going negative yet. Again, you still might see a divergence develop in the more recent price action here. So we'll see if we try to get a rally over the holidays, or if we get a bigger sell-off, do we do it after a bigger sell-off on into January somewhere? We're getting these larger possible divergences that are developing from the previous peak, But again, we might get one in the more recent price action as well. But if we turn off our current levels without going to the upper channel line, again, it could be something very similar to what we had over here. Again, and we saw that with things like the RSI as well. So just some things to be aware of in the weekly time frame. And the rainbow cloud in the weekly time frame, still bullish with the breakout there. And again, critical mass here with it. Balance of power still positive. Again, as long as these things remain positive, Bitcoin could end up going higher before the recession hits. But it's possible before the recession hits, Bitcoin peaks and begins to price it in. Recession can hit in the first or second quarter. After going sideways, the rainbow cloud has turned back to bullish with the breakout. It remains bullish. And the rainbow cloud turned bearish, and we lost the critical mass line. Eventually, that was validated with the balance of power going into the negative region and remaining there till we bottomed out and got the reversal back over here. The rainbow cloud and critical mass both turned back to bullish, and it was validated here with the balance of power turning back to bullish. We've had the sideways move go negative, then the bullish balance of power return to the bulls, and then again sideways again, 33% drop there, and again negative back to bullish. As long as things remain bullish, the bulls are in control. And again, Bitcoin stalling at resistance, but it could still attempt to clear that resistance as long as these signals that I'm showing you remain bullish. Signals which are correct remain bullish in the weekly time frame. The bulls remain in control. Could we complete a blow off top either at the level we're hitting now? Possibly. Or go up to the upper channel line that I've been showing you in my videos there with the log scaling. Talked about the RSI in the weekly time frame, and here it is. Again, it's turning down. Could it end up getting a divergence right here, and we still end up going higher and hitting that upper channel line, 115, 120, 122, something like that. Here in the weekly time frame. Certainly possible that you get a divergence here. Now over here we didn't. We got a divergence at the first peak in 2021, and while we got a divergence in the second peak on the daily chart, we didn't get it on the weekly RSI in the more recent price action, but we did with diverge from the previous peak, and we could see something like that here right now that gives us this possible reversal right here now. It might be though that the RSI turns back up and we get a divergence right there in the more recent price action, still forming a larger divergence with this previous peak. So do keep that in mind. But I'm watching the RSI closely as we're turning off of this trend line that I've been talking about. And if we're going to turn, we would have to get a 2050 sell signal. Right now, we still have a bullish 2050. We're above the 50 level on the RSI. We're above the 20-week moving average. So if you start losing the 20, you start losing the 50 on the RSI like we did over here. You lost the 50 level, you lost the 20, and bad stuff starts happening, and you stayed consistently below that 50 through that decline. Sideways, we jumped up and above and below. Here, that was kind of a sideways move in that 33% sell-off. We're holding above 50. So again, if Bitcoin is going to go higher, it still might form a divergence. It's got to clear this trend line. As the RSI is turning down, the stochastic is rolling over here in the weekly time frame. So again, it could still end up forming a larger divergence, but again, we'll be watching. Do we get a bigger sell-off, a smaller sell-off? Do we get a reversal? Or do we just get a pullback, a shallow pullback or a deeper pullback? Now, while the MACD is moving higher than the previous peak, we didn't have that before, we're not seeing the same thing. Momentum and the price oscillator, they're still forming divergences as they previously did. So again, we'll be watching to see what happens here with the RSI and some of these other indicators. If we end up getting a bigger sell-off over the holidays, watch the stochastic, because again, look at the stochastic over here with the second peak. It turned down, the second peak in 2021, it turned down, but then turned back up, and it did form a divergence like what we had in the daily time frame. Even though you didn't get it on the RSI there, you did get it on the stochastic, the little divergence right there, right here, and then this larger one right here from this previous peak over here. So you did get the divergence on the stochastic, but it's not on the RSI in the most recent price action. So we'll be watching what happens here with our RSI.